A 50-year journey come full circle. Written by Dr. Matthew A. Johnson. I'm Willi Rose, and we are on Chapter 15 in the book entitled Come Out and Play in the Dark. After my male bonding experience with the adolescent Bigfoot forest person in the Southern Oregon habituation area, or SOHA, I simply had no more fear. I was no longer worried about the possibility that one of them was going to, sooner or later, hurt my family, friends, or me. After all, there's so much misinformation on the internet and various Bigfoot Facebook groups regarding how the Bigfoot species are malevolent and waiting for the right time to cannibalize all of humanity. Well, I had first-hand experience that I was absolutely in no danger at all. Phew! It was nice to kiss my fear goodbye. But was it really gone for good, or did I have more room for growth regarding my learning how to trust the Bigfoot forest people? As I continued to make multiple trips to SOHA with friends or by myself, I started to hear the same mind-speak message over and over again. No lights. At first, I wasn't sure what was meant by that message. Then during one trip, Cynthia and I were camping out in SOHA, and we had the lantern on top of the hood of the Suburban. It wasn't quite dark yet, and we both happened to be looking in the direction of the vehicle at the same time when we saw the lantern fly off the hood and land on the ground about 10 feet away. No, gravity didn't cause it to slide on the curved hood and slide off the front of the car. The lantern did exactly what I said it did. It flew off the hood of the Suburban in a horizontal direction and landed on the ground 10 feet in front of the Suburban. Then, you guess it, no lights. We began to carefully warn and instruct our guests to SOHA that we had implemented a no-lights policy. When asked why, we would simply explain to them that the Bigfoot forest people did not want us to have any lights on at night. They preferred to interact with us in the dark. Therefore, no more lanterns, campfires, headlamps, or flashlights. Well, we would allow the use of flashlights if someone had to dig through a duffel bag to find something in the dark. However, no one could use their flashlights to point toward the bushes and trees. Matter of fact, we went out of our way to make sure that we had everything staged before it got dark, so we didn't have to dig through our bags or the vehicle to find something later in the dark. Well, it worked. The Bigfoot forest people started coming in closer and closer to the base camp. They had no fear of us trying to light them up with a flashlight or with the flash of a camera. They appreciated us respecting their request, as well as our demonstration of trust in them, because we no longer feared being around them in the dark. In a nutshell, we were submitting to their requests and giving them the upper hand. Well, they've always had the upper hand. Nevertheless, spending time in the base camp without any light all night long definitely felt like being placed in a submissive and vulnerable position. You wouldn't believe the number of men who came out to SOHA with me who had a problem with a no-lights policy. Some of them were very honest with me and admitted that they were afraid of the dark. They would go out of their way to tell me that they didn't fear any animals in the forest, including the Bigfoot forest people, but they could never get over their personal fear of the dark. One gentleman said to me, "Matt, I've been afraid of the dark ever since I was a kid. To this day, I have to sleep with a nightlight on in my bedroom." I assured him that he was going to be fine. The first night was always the scariest night for most of the attendees in SOHA. However, when they woke up alive the following morning, they weren't as scared on the second and third nights. During one solo trip to Soha, I was snuggled inside my sleeping bag in the tent. Atlas was resting on top of the sleeping bag down by my feet. As I was starting to drift off, I was startled by a noise over by the Suburban about 30 feet away from me. The adolescent male had lifted up the camp stove on the table and then set it back down again. Then I heard him drag the garbage bag slowly but surely across the ground from the table all the way over to in front of my tent. Please keep in mind that the garbage bag wasn't so heavy that he had to drag it all the way. He could have carried it over to the tent. Instead, I believe that he playfully wanted to get my attention. Well, he most definitely had my attention. He then swiped the front of my tent at the ground level with a garbage bag. I felt it brush against my feet at the front of the tent. Atlas jumped up, ran up the sleeping bag to my head, and then dove inside the sleeping bag. The adolescent male picked up the garbage bag and swiped the front of my tent for a second time at the ground level. Finally, he did it a third time. I was laying there wondering what the heck he was trying to do. Then he dragged the garbage bag across the dead-end cul-de-sac at the end of the dead-end logging road and walked away. I laid flat on my back inside my sleeping bag, totally perplexed as to why he just did what he did. Eventually, I fell asleep. When the sun came up later that morning, I got out of my tent and made my way across the cul-de-sac and found the garbage bag tied to the trees. Yes, that's right. Tied to the tree with the plastic ties from the garbage bag itself. Oh, wow. Why did he do this? Well, I eventually concluded that he did it because he wanted me to come out of my tent and sleep outside. Well, that wasn't going to happen. Instead, it freaked me out, so I started sleeping in the back of my Suburban. I know. My fear was all gone, right? Well, apparently not. I obviously still had some fear within me, and I believe that the adolescent male was carefully and gently confronting my fears. One night, while sleeping in the back of the Suburban with Grady, I woke up because I thought I heard a knock on the window. But I fell quickly back to sleep. I was very exhausted, and I don't think that anything or anyone could have kept me awake at that moment in time. When I returned home from my trip to Soha with Grady, as usual, I started to listen to hours and hours of audio recordings. Sure enough, during that moment in time, I clearly heard the adolescent male walk into the base camp, mess with a couple of items on the table, and then walk over to the Suburban and knock on the window a couple of times. Then he walked away. After the tent incident and the window knocking, I couldn't conclude anything other than the fact that the adolescent male Bigfoot forest person wanted me to start sleeping outside in the open under the stars. Once again, he was giving me an opportunity to show him that I trusted him rather than feared him. I was learning that I still had lots of fear to overcome. I was learning that fear was a barrier to relationship building with the Bigfoot forest people. They don't like it when we fear them. I thought it through and concluded that the wall of a nylon tent or the glass window of a Suburban wasn't going to stop a Bigfoot forest person from getting a hold of me and killing me if they really wanted to do so, right? Isn't it silly that so many people feel safer within their tent at night than they do sleeping out in the open under the stars? Too funny. We're like little kids, hiding under blankets in bed, because if the boogeyman can't see you, then it can't get you. Newsflash. A Bigfoot can get you through your tent wall, your camper wall, or through the glass window of your vehicle. Also, if they were as dangerous as some Bigfoot researchers would like everyone to believe, then why did I keep waking up alive every morning after morning after morning, month after month, year after year? Simple applied logic leads to only one conclusion. The Bigfoot forest people aren't dangerous, and they want us to be outside with them in the dark. They want us to trust them. They don't want us to fear them. Once I amended the protocol in Soha to include the mandatory sleeping outside on cots, the activity level started increasing again. I began to see a pattern develop. The less fear we displayed and the more trust we demonstrated to them, the more they reached out to us. Also, I learned that some people simply weren't willing to overcome their fears. When I told some potential guests that they weren't going to be able to sleep inside a tent or their vehicle, they opted out of coming to Soha. Although they wanted to see and possibly interact with the Bigfoot forest people, the thought that they could wake up in the middle of the night with one of them standing right next to their cot and checking them out was just too scary for them to overcome. As time passed, we were viewing more and more silhouettes with eye glow on the edge of the perimeter of the Soha base camp. We were also beginning to experience them coming into our main camp area cloaked. They would playfully poke our back or arm or pull on our clothing. Occasionally, someone sitting in a camp chair was lucky enough to resolve a shoulder and neck rub. We were also starting to see more orbs zipping around the base camp, too. Soha was starting to become a very magical place, the happiest place on earth. In November of 2013, I was out in Soha with Michael Beers and Gunnar Monson. They were sitting in their chairs with their backs to the Suburban while I was walking around the edge of the perimeter playing my music. The light on my device was lighting up the attendees while I was playing my music to them. I walked from the 9 o'clock position on the perimeter to the 12 o'clock position and then over to the 3 o'clock position. During my musical sweep of the perimeter, I managed to count the presence of 8 juvenile belly crawlers, 3 toddlers, and 3 adolescents. It was obvious to me that we had way more attendees than just the local family. I walked over to the Suburban and told the guys what I had seen and counted. Michael said that while I was at the 12 o'clock position, he saw a juvenile walk out of the brush behind me. When I started to turn back in the young one's direction, he darted back into the brush. They both suggested that I sweep the perimeter again and count while I played some more music to them. I did as both Gunnar and Michael requested, and I counted 14 of them again, 8 juvenile belly crawlers, 3 toddlers, and 3 adolescents. While I was standing in the 9 o'clock position on the perimeter and playing my music, I had 3 belly crawlers right in front of me on the other side of the berm. They didn't seem to care that I could see them. They were more interested in watching the music video on my cell phone while the music was playing. Suddenly, off in the distance, about 60 feet back from the edge of the road, I saw 2 beings of light appear. They were about 8 feet tall and they were translucent. I could see right through them. I could see the outline of their head, neck, shoulders, arms, trunk, and legs. If that wasn't shocking enough, I began to see a fog of light emanate from their feet. It was flowing across the ground like fog on a Broadway stage created by using dry ice and water. The fog of light was illuminating the entire area. While I stood there looking at these two beings of light, I began to feel a strong sense of unconditional love. Overwhelming unconditional love. I was moved to tears as I stood there. In the meantime, the three belly-crawling juveniles were still watching the music video on my cell phone and didn't seem to be bothered by the event. I seriously contemplated walking up the berm, past the juveniles, and straight to the beings of light. However, I didn't want to upset the parents of the little ones. As quickly as the beings of light appeared, they disappeared, and the illuminating light was gone. It was dark again. I walked over to Michael and Gunnar and sat down. They could tell that I was emotionally moved by something. They could see the tears rolling down my cheeks. They asked what happened, and I told them. They told me that they saw the area light up, but they weren't sitting in a position to be able to see the two beings of light off in the distance. Those two gentlemen were very kind and supportive. They never once disrespected me or questioned the veracity of my experience. The next morning, we awoke at sunrise and went out to check the gifting bowls. We knew that more had shown up to join us on the edge of the perimeter of the Soha base camp, so I had placed 8 peanut butter and raspberry jelly sandwich halves into each gifting bowl. There was a total of 16 sandwich halves. When we arrived at the gifting bowl area, we were amazed by what we found. There were only 2 sandwich halves left in the bowls. In other words, the 14 younger Bigfoot forest people that I counted on the perimeter the night before each took 1 sandwich half. Well, 16 minus 14 equals 2. All 3 of us were blown away, not to mention that we found fingerprints on the bowls, too. It turned out that sleeping out in the open and implementing our no lights policy helped to enhance our experience at Soha. The more that we demonstrated that we trusted them and had no fear, the more they would notch up the interaction level. By the way, at the time of the event, I had absolutely no idea who the beings of light were. All I knew was that if we hadn't implemented the no lights policy, I would have never seen the light. There's more to come. That's the end of Chapter 15, and we go on to Chapter 16, Circumstantial Evidence. You're listening to the reading of Bigfoot, a 50-year journey come full circle by Dr. Matthew A. Johnson. I'm Willi Rose.